podcast. I'm your host, Donovan McNabb, joined with Armando Segura. Let's not waste any time or any of your patience, and let's give you the information that's kind of been out there right now. We just had an interview yesterday with the great Jerry Jones, the one who's so informative during his interviews, will tell you any and everything that you least expected and things that you probably expected. So when asked about his coaching decision, if will Mike McCarthy will be his head coach to continue to lead him possibly to a Super Bowl, Jerry decided to defer a little bit and talk a little bit about how great Bill Belichick is, and to talk that he could work with Bill Belichick and things would work out. The age difference is really that far apart from each other, but Bill would be able to do a great job, and he loves everything that Bill's been able to accomplish, not really supporting his head coach or his quarterback. He mentioned something about, world Dak took us as far as Dak could take us. And as a former quarterback, that's not a full support of having a guy as the face of your franchise and the guy who really takes all the bullets when it comes to negative conversation about the Dallas Cowboys. They always seem to point the finger at Dak, talk about his flaws, continue to say that this is something that we all expected because it's the Cowboys when Dak Prescott is your quarterback. And he never showed the full support for Dak Prescott. But Armando, when you look at where we are right now in the offseason, the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones talking, is this more of a marketing ploy, or did he really drop the ball with this interview?
Well, so when I look at that, it's hard for me to look at that because I can't take my eyes off of those curtains behind you. Like, dude, what the hell?
It's my backdrop. Well, I'm bringing the 80s, 70s, 80s vibe back. So it's more of trying to get you woosah and get you relaxed.
Oh my God. Yeah. So my wife was talking about like getting a dress for the Super Bowl next week and stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna show her this show and tell her get a dress with that print, so I don't have to take you anywhere.
I'll say no. Please don't wear a dress with that print.
Oh my God!
I'm in LA. I'm on the road. I'm headed back home today. So I'm just doing it remotely and just kind of changing the vibe a little bit now.
I got you. So now this is the first step, I think, Donovan, in the Bill Belichick haunting the NFL phase of our program. And it's going to happen for the next year unless Bill Belichick gets some sort of completed Hail Mary and becomes the head coach of the Washington Commanders. That's the only job that's left open. There is no other opportunity for Bill Belichick to be a head coach in 2024 unless he lands that job. And as we've spoken of before on this show, I mean, I think it makes sense, but apparently it's a youth movement and Bill Belichick is too old and everybody's over, 50 years old is too old now. And so that's the end of that. I don't get it. So what you have with the Cowboys is Jerry Jones talking about, I can work with Bill Belichick. He's a friend. We get along. What does that do to Mike McCarthy? Mike McCarthy now is anytime he loses next year, anytime he does something Mike McCarthy-ish, what name is going to come up immediately around the Dallas Cowboys and their media?
Bill Belichick.
It's right?
Yeah.
He is the ghost of Belichick.
The funny thing, Armando, when you look at that whole dynamic, and we still have to figure out if their defensive coordinator is going to be up for it. He possibly could get the Washington Commanders job as well, because we haven't heard of any candidates who have been in for interviews in Washington Because when you think of it, it would have been perfect for the defensive coordinator who now is the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. You would have thought he just would have drove over from Baltimore to Washington just for an interview, or they would have tried to bring in Johnson, the offensive coordinator of Detroit, which he came out to say he's staying with the Detroit Lions, which I personally think that that's a smart move in his regard because bigger jobs will open up probably the next 2 years. And then you have a guy like Eric Bieniemy who was on staff that was interviewed by a few teams. I think he had 2 interviews, but they never mentioned where. He may end up being like David Culley, or I should say, I mean, he may be like the Houston Texans situation, which they end up having to have Eric Bieniemy as their head coach because no one's going to take the job. And so with the Washington Commanders, it's either Bill Belichick or it could be Gus Bradley or Eric Bieniemy because, I mean, personally, I don't think anyone is that interested in that Washington Commanders job.
Yeah, and again, it's like he's not good enough to be in the NFL with any other team, but the name is, it resonates well enough to be the hammer that is held over accomplished head coaches.
Right.
And I would have fired Mike McCarthy. I'm going to be straight out. I think that's not a secret on this podcast. I don't think that he is the guy to take the Dallas Cowboys over the hump, so to speak. I don't think he's a great playoff coach, and his history proves that he's not great in the playoffs. He's proven it with the Cowboys the last few years. Great in the regular season, but not in the playoffs. And you also have the issue of Bill Belichick kind of resonating in Philadelphia too. Nick Sirianni saved his job and did a great job of at the end of the season telling Jeffrey Lurie, we're going to change things. He fired his offensive coordinator. He's fired
defensive coordinators.
S plural.
Yeah, the janitor. He fired
Everybody. Yes. Fired. And what's interesting is they fired Sean Desai, who is their defensive coordinator. They replaced him with Matt Patricia, and then now they've hired Vic Fangio, who basically is the guy who ran the same defense that Sean Desai was running, because Sean Desai learned under Vic Fangio. So they're back to square one, except with a more experienced, defensive coach. They're going to run the same stuff that failed for them on defense last year. They're running the same stuff in 2024.
Well, the interesting part for the Philadelphia Eagles is that decision making, and I came out and talked about it on this show, and I talked about it on WIP, on my local call-ins on Monday, and I talked about really the one that's on the hot seat is Howie Roseman, and I said that because everyone wanted to go right to the quarterback, everybody wanted to go right to the head coach. Well, the decision making of the players that have been brought in his draft picks as of late really just kind of hasn't panned out yet. Now, to say yet, I'm still giving them time and sitting back. Now, they were older by having Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox still there. And was that kind of holding back the progress of Davis and allowing Carter to kind of get full reign as a rookie, which I don't think that was a good move. I mean, I thought with the way they handled it was perfect for Jalen Carter, giving him, I think he had 25 to 35 snaps a game. But they just haven't been able to assure up the middle of that defense, meaning their linebacking core and their safeties, which they've lost both of their safeties. The linebackers have moved on, but they have drafted in that regard, and they just weren't good enough. Bradbury struggled last year. Saleh went out with a knee injury and missed a few games and came back. So I just think with that defense, it's more about the players than the scheme. And when it becomes to the players, you look at Vic Fangio, and we talked about it. You kind of had Xavier and Howard on one side, and then Jalen Ramsey came back. So at least from the island standpoint, those guys do a great job on the outside. Now their safeties can be a little bit aggressive, and their linebackers were flowing. Now losing Bradley Chubb, uh, was it? Yeah, Bradley Chubb in that Baltimore game really hurt them later going into the playoffs. But it's more about the players than the scheme, and that's what we'll see possibly unless free agency and draft elevate this year for that defense to get better.
Yeah, and with the Eagles and Vic Fangio, it's a strange union.
Mm-hmm.
And in Miami, Vic Fangio had a unit that they produced to a degree, not
Correct.
the degree they needed, but they produced. And it didn't mesh. It was like the older, old school coach with this young buck kind of roster, and they
Yeah.
doing it their way, and
Yeah.
Vic Fangio wants to do it his way.
Correct.
Ramsey wanted to travel with the best
The
receiver,
number one receiver.
and Vic Fangio likes to play his left and his right, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they didn't mix, they didn't mesh, and the players complained, which, by the way, that's pretty weak. Uh, Vic Fangio has done way more in the NFL than any player on the Miami Dolphins defense, has accomplished way more, and has a better reputation than practically every single player on that defense, except for maybe Jalen Ramsey. And yet they're arguing with him or unhappy with him. Get a life. Grow up. Seriously. That guy forgotten more defense than you've ever known. And so give me a break with that. But the reason
Get off my lawn. Get him, Armando.
yeah.
Put him up. Put him up. Put him up.
Damn kids. But the reason we're talking about that is because if it goes sideways next year for Nick Sirianni, again, running the same defense again, guess whose shadow also will be over that situation? Bill Belichick. It's like the shadow of Bill Belichick, the ghost of Bill Belichick, is going to be everywhere in 2024.
Well, it's Vic Fangio's up there in age too. I think Vic Fangio might be 65. And so I know he's not far from Bill if he's there at Bill. I know he has family that lives in Pennsylvania, and they talked about that. So now he can be closer to home, and the family would definitely be there. But I just think for at this situation, you talked about the ghost of Bill Belichick, and then you also talked about the expertise and the experience of Vic Fangio calling plays in this league and the reputation that he has. Well, you look at kind of Bill Belichick, and you look at his last 5 years, and it hasn't been stellar. And so remember, the conversation with Bill was, can he do it without Tom Brady? And his first year with Mac Jones, when they drafted Mac Jones, it was a pretty decent year. Pro Bowler. Um, you had kind of the eyes and the mentality of, okay, Mac's on the rise. And then his decision making from the GM and from the decision maker, the draft and then the coaching situation of not having an offensive coordinator and appointing two people to run the offense, being Judd and also Patricia, which both of them really never called plays. Patricia was on defense, so he was, I guess, the guy that was combating with Judd, who was fired from the Giants. And then they hurt Mac Jones in his process, his development process for the next couple of years. And we see where Mac Jones is, which I think New England ends up probably trading Mac Jones somewhere and drafting a quarterback, possibly May, in the draft, or maybe Jalen Daniels. Who knows? But I just think for Bill Belichick, those are things you have to question as well, even though that he's late in his career and his resume is longer than anybody else that's coaching right now.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about how absolutely Bill Belichick, and everybody goes to the low hanging fruit of Bill Belichick without Tom Brady has been a poor coach
Right.
and under 500. And that is absolutely true. The more I think accurate statement is Bill Belichick, the general manager, destroyed Bill Belichick, the coach. He his his decisions as the head of the organization's personnel department was terrible,
Right.
and I could there's examples after examples after examples. They picked Sonny Michel, and he went to Georgia, saw Sonny Michel and Nick Chubb, and picked Michel in the first round. he needed a wide receiver. He picked N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, N'Keal Harry, yeah, out of Arizona State.
Yes, over AJ Brown and DK Metcalf.
DK Metcalf.
Like, wow. And by the way, Metcalf and Brown were on the same campus and playing for the same team.
And looked like two big bouncers. Looked like two big bouncers from a club. Yeah.
And run like deer.
Yeah.
So that was just and it's one thing after another that failed. And then of course the Mac Jones situation, which I had NFL scouts tell me, look, Mac Jones is a failure. And this was before he was drafted. That guy's not good, they said. And then he had that really nice rookie year, and they were like, wow, I guess we were wrong. And then the last 2 years came along, and they're like, oh, I guess we were right.
Uh-huh.
I guess we were right.
Uh-huh. Well, the funny thing is in that draft with Mac Jones, remember Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, all of them were in that draft. And really, I mean, I would say probably the most successful quarterback of them all is Justin Fields. But there's still questions about what the Bears will do with him, knowing that Caleb Williams is coming out this year. So will he be on the trading block, or will they decide to stay with, Justin Fields? But let's move on to Seattle, where they have a quarterback in Geno Smith, have an offense that has a few weapons with Walker, the running back, DK Metcalf. We talked about Lockett is still a good premier number 2 option. And they've shown that they can put points on the board. This defense has a few big names at the cornerback position. Their linebacking core, obviously, being able to call a defense and be experienced and lead at tackles. I think, their front four is serviceable. But what they did decide to do is go and get Baltimore defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald, a guy that we had talked about was going to be a hot name. And really, depending on what happened in that AFC Championship game against Kansas City, which their defense played fairly well and was well prepared. But I think the Seattle Seahawks made that decision just because of his resume this year or last 2 years. Also, the way that he defended against San Francisco when Baltimore went to San Francisco and played well, the way that the team would play against the Rams, it's a good fit because he knows how to defend and be able to compete with the 49ers and with the Rams. Not so much with the Arizona Cardinals because everybody defended well against the Arizona Cardinals. So I just think for, Mike Macdonald and the Seattle Seahawks, it's a great marriage. Now it's really just putting the pieces together.
Yeah, I have a little bit different take in that once again with my old guys, they've replaced Pete Carroll with a guy who is half his age. Exactly half his age. Pete Carroll 72, Mike Macdonald 36. Carry half. I did a little division there. Yes. all these, and that was a great breakdown and reasoning of why you need Mike Macdonald as your defensive coordinator in Seattle, because
Yeah,
now you can stop you, and hopefully you can stop the scheme in Los Angeles with the Rams and Sean McVay, and in San Francisco with the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. But ultimately, Mike Macdonald is not the defensive coordinator
right.
of the Seattle Seahawks. He's going to be the head coach, and we don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be. And this just feels like they made the change to get younger, which is
Correct.
which is I mean, it's a reason, but is it a good reason? I don't know. Mike McDaniel's experience to me is not does not yell, "Hey, you know what? I absolutely need to be a head coach in the NFL." I mean, 2 years as a defensive coordinator in the NFL, 1 year at Michigan, and
Hmm.
and before that, going back and forth in different places. I
Right.
I get it. I just don't feel like it's a huge upgrade. We will see. Uh, Look, again, with the older guys, I just don't believe that we're in a situation where Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, and you said Ron Rivera are not employed today in the NFL, but Brian Callahan, Gerard Mayo, and Mike McDonald are. Uh, how I look, I don't see it as upgrade. I see the situations. The owner didn't love Mike Vrabel there at the end because he wanted to do it his way, and now he's doing it his way at home. And Belichick, obviously, his
Doing it my way.
yes, and Pete Carroll is now going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro or something like that because he needs a challenge.
Uh,
And Ron Rivera, I saw him at the airport the other day in Charlotte, probably going to interview for assistant coaching jobs. Ron, dude, brother, you're good. It whatever.
hey, the coach, and that's the thing. It's wild, but I understand where the game is. And remember, we just talked about Vic Fangio, where the players in Miami were questioning some of his decision making, and it was an old school mentality of the way that he was calling the defense, and the younger guys just weren't, flowing with it. And that's where the game is now. You're going younger, and, and the ones who started it pretty much were the guys that we just talked about, the Sean McVays, the Kyle Shanahans, and the Matt LaFleur's, where now you're looking at young, innovative minded head coaches, offensively minded head coaches that are taking over organizations and drafting these young players to try to develop them to understand how to attack and approach from a Rain Man standpoint, where X's and O's are flying around above your head, and it's like, I'm going to attack them by the ankles and go right by the knees and hips, and we're going to run a corner route with a lot of posts and then hit the back. And then people are just like, "Oh, we love that. We want to get that same type of approach," but it doesn't always work out that way. And so for Mike McDonald in this situation, hey, I'm all for it, for a young guy having this opportunity. I'm all for it for the former offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting his opportunity in Carolina. I'm all for it for the Raheem Morrises. I'm all for it for the Jim Harbaughs coming back into the NFL from college. So it brings an excitement and a different energy when you have new faces and big questions instead of hiring the old guys, which I don't even put Mike Vrabel in that situation because Mike Vrabel's not that old. I think Mike Vrabel might be about 51, and so and he's not that much older than me. So I just think for Mike Vrabel, I wouldn't put him in that whole old coaching realm because I think personally, when you look at those guys that you mentioned, the Bill Belichick's and the Pete Carrolls, with that Washington Commanders situation, Mike Vrabel will probably get a better opportunity with that than Bill Belichick and also with Pete Carroll.
The thing that, by the way, I wouldn't put Mike Vrabel in the old guy category. I wouldn't put Raheem Morris in the young guy category.
Correct. Correct.
Raheem Morris, I don't equate him with the Callahan, Mayo,
No.
McDonald thing. Those guys are in their early 30s, mid 30s. He's 47, and he's been on championship teams, and he's been there and done that for years and years. He deserves. He has climbed the ladder. He has put in the work.
We're talking about Raheem Morris.
Yes, sir. In my opinion. Now, I called you sir. Wow.
And you're older than me, buddy.
Yeah, I am. And not as good looking either. But that's okay. That's okay. I got other pluses. I guess can't think of any right now. What you have with these young coaches is now they're gonna look. The whispers down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, and I know because I've talked to one of the guys, the Patriots are struggling in their interviews to find an offensive coordinator.
Right.
It's not as seamless as you might think. Gerard Mayo, I'm sure, is going to run a tight ship on defense. He's a defensive player.
Right.
He's a defensive coach. He's been the defensive coordinator. He knows what's going on defense. He hasn't a clue about offense. The guy that they hire on offense has to run and be basically the head coach of the offense. And I'm hearing that it's not going as well as they. It's a little off. Let's put it that way.
Right.
You've got McDonald. Really? So he's got to hire an offensive head coach because, whatever. He's a defensive coach. And you've got, so Callahan is a first-time 37, 38-year-old head coach who's always been an offensive coordinator, and he's hiring a first-time young defensive coordinator who's never been a defensive coordinator. So unless they are the next coming of the Houston Texans, where they had a first-time head coach and a first-time offensive coordinator, it's going to be very interesting how it works out in Tennessee, because there's going to be fits and starts. It's going to be a little clunky there for a minute.
Well, and this is when you start to bring on experienced guys to become defensive consultants. This is when you bring these older veteran coaches with experience to help out these young guys, which hopefully you don't have to make the change like Philly did, where all of a sudden mid-season you're having a guy step down and you're promoting the old guy now to call the plays. Stepping over toes is tough for any of the young guys that are on staff and have a prominent role. And then you look over your shoulder and you have this guy who's got 30 years of experience of coaching in the NFL, and he's trying to help you out. And so I just think for where we are in the league, that those decisions are going to be one that I think we have to take a look at, because that's what's going to make or break a lot of organizations. It's not going to be so much of the head coach, but it'll come down on the head coach and his decision making. And for Gerard Mayo, you have to change up that offense. The energy of what the offense used to be and what it's been since Tom left. Even when Tom was there, it was still kind of dry. It was one in which you had Gronk and Hernandez. Then you just had Gronk. Then we had, Edelman from Wes Welker. When you got Randy on the outside, and then it was, hey, we went and got Nicole Harry. And then it was, also get back to the slot receiver. And it's like, let's move the ball around and maybe find us 1,000-yard rusher. a running back that can run the ball and set up some play action game. That's where I think Mac Jones can become successful. If you bring back that old school type of West Coast offense vibe, where he's turning around and handing the football off, he's under center, in shotgun a little bit of times, maybe about 25 to 30% of the time. Other than that, he's under center. Maybe incorporating a tight end slash fullback that can move and block downhill and also catch the ball out in the flat. Uh, that's what makes, I think, Mac Jones successful in this league instead of so much of in the shotgun trying to complete balls all 15 to 18 to 20 yards, and then he never had a strong arm, and then you're trying to stretch the field consistently. That's not what's going to make Mac Jones click and be successful.
Yeah, you know what's gonna make Mac Jones click is next year when New England with the number 3 overall pick finds a quarterback and picks him, and those two guys are gonna compete in camp, and Mac Jones loses the competition, and now he's on the bench, and he's gonna be clicking with the iPad or whatever it is, the
But you
tablet.
can't. That's. Do you believe in that? Do you believe in drafting a quarterback and having the quarterback that was there have to compete with this young rookie? And what is his chances of actually beating him out when you just drafted this guy?
Mac Jones beat out Cam Newton, right? As a rookie.
Really? I mean, that's like me. That's like me coming back to compete with a young guy right now. Like Cam was coming off a shoulder injury. Cam was also on the street trying to be picked up. He was picked up by New England. It was during COVID, and so that's a tough draw. That wasn't actual competition. They allowed Mac to sit and learn on the Cam while Cam, you know, played decent. I mean, he struggled at times, but played decent. And then he was asked to slide in, and the rookie's ready to go. Which, from a mental standpoint and being well prepared, he's had former NFL coaches coaching him at Alabama, so he understood about the pro game from a mental standpoint. Would he be able to adjust his speed of the game? He didn't have the arm strength, but he still played with great players at Alabama. Would that translate to the field? And his rookie year, yes, it did. But for longevity, it hasn't.
All I know is that every coach I've ever talked to says competition is better than not having competition.
True.
And if you have a rookie that was the 3rd overall pick come in and compete with Mac Jones, or in any situation, look, the Jets are not the Jets, excuse me, the Giants. The Giants have a $40 million a year quarterback. They're going to try to find a quarterback. They're going to try to find a quarterback to come in, and he's going to have a chance to play early in the season because Daniel Jones may or may not be hurt. That means that he's going to get some play in the preseason and in camp. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're very committed to Kenny Pickett, but you know what? There's competition.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really committed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Look, if you can't compete, don't be in the NFL.
Well, but I'm not saying it in that regards. I'm saying it more for you if you decide to draft either May or Daniels in that early pick. You have to trade away Mac Jones to try to get some assets. Try to get some picks for Mac Jones instead of having him sit for a year. Because if he ends up losing the spot, then you've lost probably higher draft picks because you've already pretty much dumped him in that regard, and he's not your starter. He can't beat out. He couldn't beat out the rookie, and so I think if they decide to go quarterback in that pick, they put him up in the trading because to be honest with you, there are a few teams that could use Mac Jones' services, and Mac Jones he's not awful by any means. Mac Jones just wasn't able to develop in these last couple of years, but his rookie year he's shown. I think when you look at teams like Pittsburgh, when you look at teams like the Denver Broncos, when you look at teams that could use a quarterback right now who's accurate at times, and then also he's a guy that can distribute the ball out if you're doing your quick game and quick intermediate passing game. he's that guy. And that's why I said Pittsburgh. And then also I look at what Sean Payton was looking for and what he's used to coaching with Drew Brees is this type of quarterback. Not the strongest of arm, but can be accurate, complete 70% of his passes, 68% of his passes, all kind of dink and dunk, and move the ball. And I think those are two teams that I think could be looking at possibly getting a quarterback in and trading.
So the points you made about Mac Jones are the points that I would say the New England Patriots should make for keeping him and keeping him as their backup. We saw last year in the NFL that starting quarterbacks, they're
understandable. And
right?
he's still on the rookie deal.
And he's still on the rookie deal, but starting quarterbacks are here today, gone the next play, because it's a rough league and guys go out, and
correct,
got guys going out, and there's value in having a backup quarterback with experience. There's value of having a backup quarterback that has kind of played and been there and not done that, at least,
right,
but it has been there. And plus, who's going to give up a lot for Mac Jones? I mean,
I think you can probably, with Mac Jones, I think you can be able to get a second round and a fifth. I think. I think you can be able to get a late second rounder or early third and a fifth.
Yeah,
you just talked about it.
Manager,
Instead of like, okay, so let's go by the backups. The backups who played this year. Obviously we're not going to add Zappy because Zappy came in and sparked you for a cup of coffee with them. Is he better than the backup for the Oakland Raiders, or not Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders?
O'Connell, no.
Huh?
No, I mean they're kind of birds of a feather, to be honest.
Okay. Well, okay, I'll give you that. Is he better than Zach Wilson?
Yes, but Zach Wilson is a failed quarterback.
In the same draft class.
Yeah. The way I see Mac Jones is the way the Indianapolis Colts saw Gardner Minshew, and that they drafted their guy, and then they had Gardner Minshew in the background. You can draft your guy if you're the New England Patriots and have Mac Jones in the background. It's a new coach. It's a new day. We're going to start over. It's going to be fine. I know you cry a lot and you want a lot, but just relax. It's a new day.
So now you got a top 15 quarterback that you drafted in the first round, now becoming your backup.
That he's no longer the top 15 quarterback, Donovan. He is now the guy that failed as the starter. Bailey Zappi was starting ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, but this is what I'm saying, and this is why San Francisco traded Trey Lance. This is why the Chicago Bears are thinking about trading Justin Fields. This is why the New York Jets are in the situation they are when they brought over Aaron Rodgers. When now you have to play Zach Wilson. It doesn't go well, of course, and now you got to figure out who wants Zach Wilson, because you can't have Zach in the building to be your backup when Aaron is so-called coming back because he's, healthy enough. You have to make a decision. And I think those decisions with all those quarterbacks that came out in that draft class will be at different locations, I think, beginning of next season.
I just think that when they're not this Justin Fields, there's still a question of whether he's going to be good or not. Trey Lance, there's still a question of whether he's going to be good or not. And you're talking about guys that were picked in the top, 10 or something. Trey Lance, number 3 overall. Zach Wilson, there's no question. And Mac Jones, there ain't no question no more. You're not going to find a bunch of teams going, Mac Jones, okay. There's not going to be none of that. But you make a great point. All those names you mentioned, it's because there's a bunch of teams in the NFL already for next year, for 2024, that are a mess.
Yes.
Major messy problems.
Exactly. Exactly. And one it's really interesting. But let's go back to the Jets and Robert Saleh and his issues that he has going on. And Zach Wilson kind of really on low man on the totem pole when it comes to having Aaron Rodgers, who's there. And Robert Saleh seems to be trying to cater to Aaron Rodgers. And really, everyone in that organization has given Aaron free reign for decision making. And what is this doing to this football team? Obviously, the young guys are falling in love with Aaron because Aaron wasn't out on the field and Aaron has experience and they grew up watching Aaron Rodgers. Probably some of them had Aaron Rodgers jerseys back in middle school while he played. Who knows? But is it killing this organization going forward with allowing Aaron Rodgers to give the last say so with decisions that are going with Robert Saleh?
So the Jets, we know, look, Zach Wilson was a problem for them,
Right.
right? Because he is, by all accounts, a draft bust now.
Right.
He didn't perform for 3 years in a row, and that's a problem.
Right.
What they got with Aaron Rodgers was a guy who on the field is not a problem, but he wasn't on the field.
Right.
Off the field, he's a problem. And the reason he's a problem off the field is because he comes with his own personal offensive coordinator in Nathaniel Hackett, who by every account was not good at being the Jets offensive coordinator. He comes with the need to have his guys around him. There's no other team that wanted Randall Cobb in the NFL this year, but the Jets went out and got Randall Cobb because
Aaron wanted him.
Aaron
wanted him. Right. Lazard.
And Lazard
a lot of money.
And the backup that came from Green Bay, I forgot his name, ever since he threw a Hail Mary that got pick six. It's like a 99-yard Hail Mary pick six. Unbelievable. But the Jets found a way to do it, and it was an Aaron Rodgers quarterback friend that did it. My point is they got all the bad of Aaron Rodgers and none of the good.
Right.
And meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers, who were 8-9 with Aaron Rodgers in 22, they were better without Aaron Rodgers in 23. The Jets are, Robert Saleh wanting the endorsement of Aaron Rodgers so he could keep his job. That's a weird situation, and I don't see that as a winning situation right now.
Well, the tough part, I think, in this situation, meaning for Robert Saleh in this offseason, and really the first 2 quarters of the season, everything's riding on it. Because remember, there were questions if they would fire Robert Saleh and go another direction. And maybe Aaron endorsed him because he's allowing Aaron to have free reign to do whatever he wants over there. I mean, really the thing that made Matthew Hackett the offensive coordinator that allowed him to really sustain his position was the whole Sean Payton drama, because now that brought his name into light. He had the whole team supporting him. They beat the Denver Broncos. Everyone was all excited. But when you started to go back to the X's and O's and watch how things have been transpiring with the offense with the Jets, nothing excited you. And nothing that made you feel like, well, if Aaron was out there, it would be different. So the way that him calling plays and how this offense was structured, you had Dalvin Cook complaining that he wasn't getting play time. Then you had their running back who was coming off an injury. He wanted more carries. Then you had your tight end, who's one of the better young tight ends in the league, not getting opportunities. Then you have Garrett Wilson, who wants more opportunities and talking, getting upset because he wasn't getting opportunities or targets during games. And the list goes on. So I just think for Robert Saleh, this offseason with the draft, with free agency, really has to stand strong where it looks like you're moving and making the right decisions yourself to help this ball club instead of saying, well, when Aaron gets back, He's our starting quarterback. He's our leader. He's going to get us where we need to go.
You know, the NFL every year, and starting in the offseason, every offseason, it's a fight to see who becomes the best team at the end of that season. It's like in my mind, I imagine guys climbing over each other, pushing each other down to try to get ahead of each other, that kind of stuff. Kind of like me at the buffet. And, and, and but this offseason, it's a fight not to be terrible.
Yes.
You've got teams that got major problems that they need to fix to simply be
relevant. Yeah, to be relevant.
Not dysfunctional.
Right.
We mentioned the Steelers. They've got a quarterback issue, and they're going to have a competition, and they don't know who the other guy is going to be in that competition. It could
Correct.
be Rudolph or not, but they're going to get a quarterback competition. The Buffalo Bills, they're going to try to cut Stephon Diggs' salary. Sean McDermott doesn't know if he's going to call the defense or not. It's like they got a young defensive coordinator. They've got issues. You've got Micah Parsons complaining in Dallas about you didn't get enough players to go all in. You say you're all in, Jerry Jones, but we weren't all in because you didn't do the thing that we needed to be all in. And now so he's only the most important defensive player on that team, and he's complaining. We talked about the Patriots, the Cincinnati Bengals. They're going to lose T. Higgins and their starting right tackle, Jonah Williams, because they can't afford them. And they just lost their offensive coordinator. And oh, by the way, their star starting quarterback, who happens to be the highest paid player in
the building,
in the NFL, and he's injury prone now. So you got to fix that, Cincinnati Bengals. All these teams, you got the Eagles with their weirdness. You
got the Cleveland Browns with their, Joe Flacco coming back and being, Mr. Everything, and your starting quarterback is coming back off of shoulder injury. Your running back is coming back off of injury. It's a lot of questions. And then, you talk about these young teams like the Houston Texans and what we've seen. What are we expecting to see from them going forward? Green Bay, what's going to happen in LA with the Chargers and, Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. Well, you bring the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos they have no quarterback. Trevor, they have no quarterback. So is Sean Payton really the guy out there with the Denver Broncos? And then Antonio Pierce, what's he really going to do with the Vegas, the Raiders? So I just think I'm with you in that regard. It's going to be one that definitely will be interesting, and we'll keep an eye on it. But let's leave a little bit on the bone for our listeners and our viewers, Armando, and let's go and grab us some hot breakfast with some pancakes and some waffles and some eggs, maybe some
French toast,
cinnamon. Throw the cinnamon on top. So please join us back again next week here at the 5 Spot when we dive a little bit more into the decisions that are going on with a lot of these NFL teams. Who may get hired? Who may get fired? There's a lot of questions going on. So join us back here at the 5 Spot on Tuesday as we give you more.